Hello everyone, it's ya boy Slayer here. If you're a long-time viewer, you'd know that the PS1 is arguably my favorite system ever. I'd say that the PS2 takes the cake, but the PS1 is such a nostalgic system with a bevy of classic games. Metal Gear Solid, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Gran Turismo, and about a dozen other games I could just gush over forever. But let's be real here, the PS1 has some ridiculously awful games as well. With the PS1 being an early pioneer in 3D graphics and gameplay, there were a multitude of game devs merely testing the waters with 3D who had little idea of what they were doing. And later on in its lifespan, what with it being taken over by the succeeding PS2, we started seeing the shovelware that's to be expected with the highly successful system during its dying years. Both of these camps, however, at least have an excuse for their existence. Bubsy 3D was released mere months after Mario 64 by people who simply had no idea how to make a 3D game. Don't get me wrong, it's one of the worst things of all time, but I can understand its shortcomings, if that's how you'd put it. On the other side of the spectrum, stuff like Super Bubble Pop or Austin Powers Pinball were never gonna be big sellers anyways. The PS2 was already out and these games were mere afterthoughts anyways, so who really gives a shit? I had Austin Powers Pinball up for consideration for this review, with it being a game I bashed back in my earlier reviews.
Released in 2002, Austin Powers Pinball defies all logic in its existence. It's a game so lacking in content that it would barely pass for a 99-cent phone game on the App Store in 2019.
You know, when my editing was really bad. But what can I say about it, really? It's barely even a game to begin with. I've had more fun taking my GED than playing this game. How could I possibly get more than 5 minutes out of bashing such a non-game? So after asking some people on my Discord server what game I should talk about, I decided to go with Rascal, an overlooked turd in the realm of PS1 games. So shout out to Mysterious Maple Syrup, also known as TGX, yes, that TGX, for helping to spark this review. So without any further ado, let's play this trash. But before I dive into this landfill of bad game programming, I want to take a look at the box art. My god, is this so 90s. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was already on its way to being dated upon release. Remember kids, if it's totally rad, bling bling, or lit, it's going to be absolutely dated within the next few years. But as a wise man once said, thou shalt not judge a game by its cover art. Huh, Traveler's Tales made this game? I'm shocked considering they have a decent track record. Oh well, we all have our missteps. So I have a bit of a funny story with this game. When I was initially recording gameplay footage, it kept crashing every time I went into this portal. Crashing during key moments isn't something that usually happens when I emulate PS1 games, so I had no idea how to fix this aside from opting to use the PAL version instead. I had to do a similar thing for my Gran Turismo 3 review. I'm guessing certain NTSC ROMs are just haunted, like they're trying to tell me Europe is superior to the USA. I mean, they're completely right, but still. My ROM of Bubsy 3D keeps pausing itself over and over again. No, really, I'm not pushing anything, it just does that. And I'm unable to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on my emulator because it'll just black screen as soon as you enter the menu. That is until I changed the settings and I was finally able to play the game. Yeah, emulators can be a bit fucky sometimes. I won't be discussing the plot to this game because I didn't pay attention to what little there is, and the whole thing can be summed up in like one paragraph or so. Even if this game had a decent story, it wouldn't matter because my god does this thing control like a nightmare. Tank controls were fairly common during the PS1 era, but I don't think there's a single game on said system that controls worse than this one. It's screwed up in a multitude of ways. I'll go forwards when I want to go backwards when I want to go forwards, I'll often continue to walk when I want to turn around, and so on and so forth. It is simply not a fun game to control, and this just completely ruins the gameplay and makes it even more difficult than it should be. Compare this to, let's say, Spyro, where you had fluid control over your character. You became one with the character you were controlling, to the point where you forget you're even holding a controller in the first place. Rascal is the exact opposite. The controls and physics just don't feel natural at all. and you'll be giving yourself hand cramps just trying to get everything down correctly. Even other tank-controlled games such as Tomb Raider weren't nearly as bad as this. I can't begin to tell you how much unintentional damage or even deaths I took from the poor controls. The gameplay, even when it isn't affected by the abhorrent controls, doesn't fare any better. There are challenging games, there are hard games, then there is just plain unfair. Rascal is an unfair game. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. There is a fine line between a game being difficult and a game being poorly designed. In, say, Crash Bandicoot, if you messed up, it was your fault. Once you manage to get the hang of exactly what you were supposed to do, it actually becomes fairly easy to pull off. Rascal isn't like that. You'll have enemies randomly spawn right in front of you, causing you to unintentionally take damage. There are these flaming pods scattered all throughout the first level that can burn you if you jump over them. Christ's sake, the first level took me an hour just to finally beat. And I'm not bad at video games, mind you. Everything from the poor controls causing cheap deaths to the fact this game doesn't really give you any clues as to what you're supposed to be doing. The first time I reached the end of the level, I was unable to leave it because this little icon wasn't filled up all the way. So it took me 3 tries and nearly 20 unfair deaths just to beat this level. I needed a walkthrough just to beat the first level. The levels have this almost Metroidvania style to them when it comes to the design. The thing is, Symphony of the Night was intended for older players who are more experienced, while this game is obviously targeted towards kids. Most games targeted towards younger players will have more straightforward level design to make it easier for the intended audience. Even semi-open world games like Spyro are fairly straightforward when it comes to what you need to do. I'm an adult and I managed to get a little bit lost in the first level early on. Granted, the map system is kinda poor, but still, that's not something I should be saying about a game like this. If there is one good thing about the levels, it's that they have a decent aesthetic to them. Granted, I wasn't able to make it past the first 2 levels for reasons I'll get into in a bit, but having looked up a playthrough of the whole game, I can safely say that these levels look fairly nice. It shows that this game really could have had decent potential if the controls and enemy placement had been fixed. But oh boy, if you thought the controls and gameplay were the only things holding this game back, let me introduce you to this game's save and checkpoint system. Around the mid to late 90s, games were starting to incorporate checkpoint systems. If you die midway through a level, you'd respawn in the middle of the level, or whatnot to prevent you from having to trek through the entire level again. The Crash Bandicoot games would be completely broken if they lacked a checkpoint system. Rascal with its Metroidvania-esque levels should have a checkpoint system, or mid-level saves at the very least, but it doesn't, and this completely ruins the game. These levels can take you upwards of 15 or 20 minutes, or even longer if you're uninitiated like me. So if you die and lose all of your lives, you have to painfully trek through the entire level all over again. You can only save in this one room in the hub world, and to top it all off, if you forget to save in this room that you might overlook on your first playthrough, and happen to lose all your lives, you gotta start the whole thing back at the beginning. It doesn't matter how far you've progressed, if you lose all your lives right before reaching the final level, you are fucked. This combined with the lack of extra lives and checkpoints caused me to rage quit on the second level. Keep in mind, I've played through 10 levels in Drake of the 99 Dragons before giving up, and I thought that was the worst game I've ever played. I normally don't like giving up this early, and I know it makes me look unprofessional, but this game really was that bad. If you haven't played this game, I dare you to play it and see if you can manage to make it past the second or third level without giving up. The save system is just that bad, even for the time it came out. And I ended up losing my save file anyways because my emulator loves shitting itself. So fuck it. Rascal, or what little I was even able to play, is the worst game I've ever played. I give it a 1 out of 10. Avoid it at all costs. But hey, before I end this review, I'll get one good thing out about this game: the frame rate and visuals. Yeah, it's a really good looking game for the standards of the system. And the fact it runs at a smooth 60 FPS just makes that even better. And apparently in early development, this game was shaping up to be a lot better. A leaked prototype build shows that it was originally going to have more fluid controls. So what the hell happened? Executive meddling. Yeah, because of the success of Tomb Raider, someone in the higher-ups during development forced the tank controls upon the devs. I can't even imagine what they were thinking. Whomever came up with that decision clearly doesn't play video games, and ruined what could have otherwise been a decent game. I don't think I'm even going to include an extras section to this review. This game just broke me. Granted, I'm lucky to not have played that many shitty games throughout my 2 decades of gaming. If I consider Battlefield 3's single-player campaign to be one of the worst things I've experienced, you know I've had it pretty good as a gamer. But I still feel the need to apologize to games I once considered to be the worst of all time. The Mummy on DS? I'm sorry to that poor cartridge I destroyed. You weren't nearly as bad as I once thought. Drake of the 99 Dragons? At least your cutscenes were unintentionally hilarious. Nothing about Rascal is funny. Rascal has simply made my life even worse. So the next time I cover a bad video game, I'm going to make sure it's the boring kind of bad. The kind of game so bland I would rather watch a second coat of beige paint drying over an already beige wall. That's right, for my next review, I'm going to be going over the 1-2 punch of Austin Powers and Kiss Pinball, 2 critically panned pinball games for the PS1. At least it can't be anywhere near as bad as Rascal.